Friends, here we are. Yeah, this episode is brought to you by the cardinal direction north. Not not even sure. I think it's a Minnesota thing. This is my wife's mug. She doesn't let me put coffee in it, but there's water. Miss Becky, there's water in here, not coffee. Not coffee. I am a little bit below the weather. They say under the weather. I'm not understanding. I don't really understand where that came from. Under the weather. But yeah, I don't get sick, folks. I don't get sick. It can't catch me. That's just been my mantra for decades. Is I don't get sick, can't catch me. But spent most of yesterday in bed, and yeah, you didn't hop onto this live stream today to hear me sniveling and sniffing. So let's get after it because there's some important work. I got to ask you just an honest question right out of the gates. If I threw this out, actually, everything that I do in the live is stuff that has already been recycled through a live team event. So if I sent a consultant to observe your institution for 1 week, okay, eyes wide open, not to look at your marketing plan or your materials or your strategic planning documents, your actual daily operations. What would disturb them most about that gap between what you project in your website and all of your materials and those fancy banners that are hanging from your light posts and what you actually produce? Yeah, if you just felt your stomach drop a little bit and you just want to like plug your nose, you're not alone. That's why we're here, folks. It's just these lives are for real conversations, real conversations that we had last week, last Wednesday, peer to peer roundtable. It's one of the most, I think, impactful things that I've done in Higher Performance Group is pulling together leaders, not as a webinar where one person is the expert in the space, but laterally where everybody has experience and wisdom and discernment in being able to really talk through real timely issues with timeless wisdom. Okay, so that happened again. We do it every quarter. Happened last Wednesday. Had a president. So, what qualifies you to attend a roundtable? You've got to be a president of a college, or you have to be a superintendent of a school district. So the two of them come together. It's a beautiful thing because it's a pipeline. We've got to figure out new ways, pre-K through 12, meeting up with higher ed. So however, let's just say pre-K through PhD, right? But this college president said we have become so habituated in viewing educational leadership through those filters. And he talked about Snapchat, and I'm not culturally even two boots on the ground. So, yeah, but I know what Snapchat is. I, I have adult children who used to use it, right? But analogous to just that social media where we present those curated identities, disconnected from real reality, right? His college was profoundly guilty, appearing as an institution, meeting mission while internally just delivering the bare minimum performance. And yeah, the numbers speak for themselves, don't they? Almost 3 million students walked away from traditional education in the last decade. Okay. 1.7 million from higher ed, 1.2 million from K 12. That's roughly the population of New Mexico, folks, right? Those students who opted for providers who weren't performing behind a filter, right? The market has already delivered its verdict. And yeah, some things have to change. Our system is broken. Drop a yep. Drop a yep in the comments right now if you agree that the system is broken. Drop a double yep if you also agree that you can't work any harder. You can't pedal any harder. That's what we're up against. We've got folks that are incredibly skilled, incredibly experienced, incredibly talented, incredibly mission focused, but have hit the ceiling year after year after year, and the gaps don't occlude. Right? Our system is broken. That's not a leadership issue. I do believe that is truly a collective intelligence issue. So we do lots of research. About 1,000 leadership teams studied last year. 60% of organizations operate at barely half of their potential, despite having brilliant team members. They hire the best, and they still have underperforming teams. Do the math, right? How many hours weekly are you sitting in meetings, pre-meetings, before the meetings, the after meetings? Most leaders, about 4.7 hours weekly is where they're sitting in meetings. And you're like, that's a Monday for me, right? Yeah, if you just do the math, just to that 4.7 hours times your 8 cabinet members times 42 weeks times, let's just say $140,000 salary, that's a little over $1 million annually. That's a medium-sized yacht, right? You're sinking into talking about the issues, right? A number of months ago, just brings up superintendent. I'll just call her Maria. She was. I've got PhDs in the room, decades of experience. I've hired the best people, but I feel more isolated than when I was a first-year principal, is what she was sharing with me. We look so good. It was so good on our webpage. We look so good in my state of the district report, right? We perform, right? Just like a group project where nobody's read anybody else's sections. Parallel play is what she called it. Yeah. I observed that team for a few sessions. Yeah, very, very brilliant individually. But zilch, not a whole lot of collective intelligence. The CFO new enrollment was declining faster than projected. The academic officer knew retention was slipping. Student services knew mental health was just spiking. But in meetings, everything was on track. Yeah. That's not Maria's failure as superintendent. That's a pattern in 70+% of the institutions that we've surveyed. We promote people based upon individual excellence. A great teacher, right, becomes a principal. That wasn't my case. I was a mediocre teacher who became a principal. I don't know. But great principals become superintendents, right? Excellent professors become presidents. But nobody taught you about collective intelligence. It's not based on any of the executive programs, the master's programs, the doctoral programs that I've had a chance to unpack, right? Helping brilliant individuals really think collectively instead of sequentially. We're good at the tactical stuff, right? So we get what I call a translation tax. Just energy is lost in moving information between brilliant people who can't really synthesize it together. Students experience fragmented support instead of coherent systems. Again, give me a yup, YUP this time. If you're making important decisions without complete information, yeah, go ahead, be honest. And you're not broken. The system is broken. And while you're maybe in your third pre-meeting, families are making enrollment decisions, right? Competitive institutions are moving faster than you are. And your best people are actually updating their resumes. And your worst people, that's probably not a good way to say it. Your most underperforming people, right? They're still sitting way in the back. Yeah. And complaining about the wrong things. Let's start complaining about the right things. Here's the framework from Wednesday's roundtable. And it's already well worn because I've used it a few times. There's a coffee stain here too. Yeah, your performance is your potential minus your interference. Yeah, there's a little hole there too. Your performance, that just non-negotiable. You got to get this stuff done. Enrollment, graduation rates, the metrics determining if you get to keep your job. Yeah, your potential. And that's a thing. I've been studying more and more, just the unbelievable reality that we have potential beyond what most of us could ever ask or imagine. There are 86 billion neurons in this body of mine. Yeah, that if they actually connect to the 86 billion neurons of the other people on your teams, great things, just beyond comprehensible things are going to happen. But that potential, I think it's always untapped within systems, right? And then the interference, the stop sticks, the speed bumps, the things that are just getting in your way, right? Or the we've always done it that way kind of interference. So if your performance drop, what do? You hire more people. You're still stuck. You add programs. You're still stuck. Well, let's do 4 disciplines of execution. Nothing wrong with that program. But the programs, they're not going to get you out of your stuck. Okay, you're adding capacity to dysfunction and just scaling what's already broken. So burn the time out, boss. Actually, my buddy, Mike Johnson, superintendent of Eau Claire School District. Eau Claire. Yeah, spell that. EAU. Doesn't make sense, does it? Eau Claire. He said, when I assumed the role in 2020, he talked about literacy performance. It was just like in the stink hole. And he said the temptation was just to add more resources, more personnel, more programs, more software, but that's financial sustainability, right? Our imperative is just systemic redesign first, then strategic talent deployment. This is probably why your last strategic initiative died between the VP of finance and the VP of academics. You added capacity, you didn't address the interference. So that's what we're here to talk about. Within your systems, think about it. Okay, who are your coasters? Yeah, the people who walk to work and run home. Who are they? The people that are probably eating way better than and definitely sleeping better than you are, right? No, don't aspire to be a coaster. But there are loads of coasters in our educational system. There are climbers, okay? I would just say the high ambition but low idealism. They're climbing the rung, but don't have that moral imperative necessarily. They're climbing for the resume, for the weight of the resume, not the weight of the impact. Um, Probably smart people optimizing the wrong metrics. You have your dreamers, just high idealism, but low ambition to actually run into the fire. Let's study this thing again. Why don't we go to a conference and let's learn more about that? The dreamer. Yeah. Beautiful vision. Just big hat, no cattle. Zero execution, right? And then you have your builders. Just high ambition, high idealism, willing to. And I met with one, Monique. This is for you. Met with Monique today from New York, a builder. Wow. Transforming, which is not just moving some furniture around. Okay. Willing to dismantle what doesn't work and then construct what does. If you just calculate what percentage of your energy goes to managing the first 3, right? The coasters, the climbers, and the dreamers. Yeah. If that's more than 40%, you don't have an execution problem. You have a talent allocation problem. Amy, one of my favorite college presidents, said the other day in the roundtable, she said, I always ask myself this: should I be investing substantial energy converting my coasters into builders? You've had that same conversation internally inside that 3.5 pounds of mass between your ears as well. How much time should I spend working with my coasters, trying to build them into builders? Perhaps a coaster can become marginally less passive, but fundamental transformation, it probably is unrealistic, you know? My strategy on hiring practices that identify builders from the outsets, that has got to be where I put my energies. She said, I have to just hire better. Yeah. So I think translation of that, you stop trying to fix people, you start hiring the right people. Wade, another superintendent from Tejas. Yes. I think half the people were from Texas on that last round table. He talked about his leadership energy just is so consumed managing adult dysfunction um, that it takes away from the student focused work. That community perception where you've got the external stakeholders experience and our institutions, through these individuals, it's challenging. Your coasters are costing you more than salary. They're costing you reputation, right? Your community trust and your leadership attention, all that stuff that your students deserve. So I got to come in for a landing because I got to blow my schnoz again. I'm under the weather, as they say. But let me tell you what Jason did, college president in Texas. Before, Texas funded community college on contact hours, enrollment, not completion. Um, his campus, Trinity Valley, optimized for butts in the seats. Bare minimum. It was just bare minimum. That was acceptable. And they rode that for a long, long time. Then Texas shifted to performance-based funding. Suddenly, the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Yeah, things changed, didn't they? Mm-hmm. Bare minimum became kind of existential in year 2 of his presidency, not year 5 after building all that relational capital. Jason stood at convocation. He said, "Hey, yo, is this on? Test, test, test. I got to apologize. I'm apologizing for previous leadership, again, year 2, who's failed you by tolerating a culture where minimal effort was acceptable. And that failure belonged to leadership. He didn't point any fingers anyplace else. But he said, this will not be our identity." Oh my goodness. Yeah, he's kind of taken over as the pole position of one of my favorite people now. Because he established what he called this championship mindset. Unbelievable how powerful the mind is and the words that we use, right? Not mandates, expectations, standards. He invited the community to define what those expectations meant operationally, not occasionally, but on a Tuesday, right? The result, high capacity professionals lit up, honestly, because somebody finally said what they've been thinking. This isn't good enough. I want to be in a winning team, right? And now we're fixing it. The bare minimalists, some probably left, some adapted, but now the builders definitely outnumber the coasters, the dreamers, and the climbers. So proud and possible. It's absolutely possible. So here's that leadership principle. I think culture change requires both clarity and co-creation. Clarity of vision from the office, right? Leaders establish non-negotiable standards while you create the space for the organization to kind of define how those standards manifest operationally. And you do that within not a subjective, but a very objective lens to say, basically, where is that line that we don't cross? We don't dip below this, right? So Jason, in this case, President Jason, didn't tell people how to build a championship mindset. He didn't say, okay, here's what it looks like. He told them that we will have one. Then he let the builders define what that meant. Beautiful, beautiful. Look him up. Trinity Valley in Texas. His shift affected his leadership team, which probably affected 50 department leaders, which probably affected 1,000 faculty, which probably affected 20,000 students. Should I keep going? Yeah, that's team intelligence, folks. Yes. Right now, at your next cabinet meeting, do a little bit of an audit. Okay. Bring Mr. Shine out here again. Column 1, list your actual capacity. That's your potential, your talent, your resources, your programs. Okay, that's column 1. Column 2, list the non-negotiable outcomes that your career depends on. That's your performance, the big P, right? Now, column 3, list everything that's preventing column 1, your potential, from producing column 2, your performance, and be brutally honest about just the legacy processes, the cultural norms, the meeting cultures, the prioritizing optics over outcomes. Probably take you 30 minutes, 3 columns, 0 excuses, get after it. And then ask, what percentage of my leadership goes to managing coasters or redirecting the climbers or just grounding the dreamers versus empowering the builders? Huh? If it's more than 40%, you have a talent allocation problem, boss. So here's probably the uncomfortable truth. If I stopped optimizing my institution's enrollment and started optimizing my region's student success, what partnerships would I pursue? What competitors would become collaborators, right? And then ask, what's preventing me from making those calls? Picking up the phone. I'm seeing more and more superintendents be invited onto the college campus and talking about partnerships, legit partnerships, right? Not just the kind that says, well, we ought to do like a workshop at the next national conference. No, real live partnerships that are going to create legit programs for students that have real live needs. So if the answer is we compete for the same students, you're optimizing for institutional preservation, right? Not student success. And preservation, it always has a smell to it, right? So if you want the full science to this, team intelligence, I've talked about it before. There's an assessment, there's a white paper. You can just go to higherperformancegroup.com, click up in the right-hand corner that says discover your team intelligence, right? You've got loads of resources there to dig into. It is truly the difference between brilliant teams, I would say brilliant individuals, and breakthrough teams. What you have by default is brilliant individuals. What I know you don't have is breakthrough teams. The breakthrough teams that, when activated, begin to close the gaps, right? Not just agree you have problems, but start acting in accordance to how we solve those problems, right? So again, kind of under the weather today, so I'm going to cut this a little bit short. We could do a virtual coffee if any of this kind of spurs you. Let me know. Just message me. I don't know. You found me here. You find me. Just find me. Message me directly. I do these daily. I do daily virtual coffees. I had 2 of them today with leaders working through these challenges. So it's no pitch, no strategic. It's BS. It's just strategic conversation. So go ahead and comment your individual versus collective intelligence score. Which foundation do you need? Maybe tag a cabinet member who needs some permission to name the dysfunction everybody just knows exists. But remember, immature leaders, they optimize for looking good in reports. And you see that, and people can see it, smell it a mile away, right? Mature leaders are optimizing for actually being winners, good at legit data. The immature leaders add capacity to solve performance gaps. And mature leaders are addressing the interference always first. Let's address the interference and then let's build our potential. Yeah, immature leaders, they define institutional structures they inherited, but mature leaders, they build pathways that students require, even if it disrupts what we've always done before, right? The difference, I think, one protects the past. Yeah. and one creates the future. If you're fighting more for keeping your job, boss, than yeah, seeing your students succeed, I'm just going to tell you straight up, I don't need to add words. Yeah, do your job. We don't need any more leaders. We need more of the right kind. Those that are going to be running into the fire, those that keep their school keys on the table and say, I'm making this decision for the right reasons. Go ahead and take my keys from me. I'll figure out a new way to pay my mortgage. But we don't need any chicken crap leaders. We need more of the right kind. The difference, I think, right? One protects the past, the other creates the future, and our systems are broken. What's the hope? You are. If you're committed to building healthy teams and reliable systems. Remember, almost 3 million students already voted with their feet. Let's build like a champion today.